Okay, that's probably everyone then. So, hello and welcome to this IFE webinar, Raising Standards in Fire Risk Assessment, BS 8674, and the new IFE qualifications explained. Thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to have you here with us today. Today's session is going to provide an overview of the British Standard and its implications for fire risk assessors, along with an introduction to the IFE's new Fire Risk Assessment Qualification Suite. We have an excellent speaker lineup to take you through this content, including Nick Coombe, who chairs the IFE Risk Assessor Register Panel, and David Escudier, Chair of the IFE Education Panel. By the end of this webinar, you'll have a clear understanding of the implications of BS 8674, how the IFE qualifications support professional development, and how they can help you progress your career in fire risk assessment. You'll see a Q&A button on your screen. Please do submit your questions throughout the session, and we'll aim to answer as many as we can at the end. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to our first speaker, Nick Coombe.
Okay, thank you. Can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so welcome. So the aim of today's webinar is to go through not line by line of 8674, but just give you an understanding of what it means for fire risk assessors. Also, as said before, we're going to look at the new qualifications and how they can succeed and help you support with professional development. David's going to cover the structure and purpose of the new qualification suite and how these qualifications support career development in fire risk assessment. So next slide, please. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the competence framework for fire risk assessments. Now, the new British Standard 8674 built on the really excellent work done by the Fire Risk Assessment Competency Council that was formed after the Lacanau fire that IFE was a key member in. And we produced the first kind of framework, competency framework for fire risk assessors that use. We've had some changes to that. The Fire Sector Federation, which is obviously now the Fire Sector Confederation, have made some tweaks to that. But now we've got a actual British standard on the competence framework. This has come out of the working group that sits under the Industry Competency Committee, Working Group 16, that I know Ian Bailey from the IFE was on, which is chaired by Dennis Davis, and has done some really good work to get this out as quick as it possibly did. Okay, next slide, please. So what does it do, the standard? Well, it provides a consistent benchmark to assess fire risk assessors' competence and supports legal compliance. It was obviously a fallout from Grenfell Tower fire, one of the recommendations around fire risk assessment, and it follows on from the coroner's recommendation of Lacanau around competency for fire risk assessors. And again, although that was 2009 now, we're still learning around fire risk assessment and competency, and I still don't think we're in the place, but this standard and the exams that David are going to talk about, I think, are a real good stepping forward. What I would say is 8764 doesn't cover every building type, and I'll look at that a little bit further when we go through the standard. Okay, but it is around it is around looking at building trust, etc., and strengthen the fire safety culture. There's no excuse now. We've got this framework that we can have what a fire risk assessor can and cannot do, which is just as important. Next slide, please. So who's the standard for? I use the term duty holders because obviously it's a British standard, so therefore covers all the fire safety legislation, not just the Fire Safety Order of England and Wales. It also covers the Scottish and Northern Ireland legislation. So therefore the term duty holders covers responsible persons, etc., primary authority persons. It's for fire risk assessors. I would recommend you have a look at this standard if you are a fire risk assessor. And more importantly as well, for organisations like the IFE and training providers, if you're providing training on what constitutes a risk assessor, you need to look at this because it contains excellent information about what you need to be a fire risk assessor. And obviously, government bodies and regulatory authorities, the move toward competency and professionalisation of fire risk assessors, the government, MHCLG now, who've now the fire bit of Home Office has moved into there, will be definitely looking at this around how they set out their proposals to make a register for fire risk assessors. Okay, next slide, please. So I think what we need to talk about as well is around not just around competency, but limits of competence. I think one of the key bits to understand if you are a fire risk assessor is what you cannot do. And it does mention this in the standard around fire risk assessors understanding their limitations. Even in complex buildings or even not so complex buildings, you may need some specialist advice. The obvious example of this is around external walls. If you can't ascertain, that it's brick or concrete, you might need to bring in some specialist advice around that because you can't do that. And there may be things around compartmentation surveys, fire door stuff, smoke control stuff, fire alarms, where specialist advice is needed. And this is where, knowing your competency and limits of it to decide if you need specialist competence advice, because obviously a fire risk assessor should have a general knowledge around all things in the fire safety world. But again, you might sometimes need some specialist help. And also we can talk about building specialisms. As I said, it doesn't really mention all the specific types because there are 3 levels that I'll cover later, but there will still be some very unique types of premises where specific specialisms are needed. I'm talking about things like heritage and things like that, nuclear installations, prisons, because the fire safety order and the UK legislation covers all types of building sites. You could even argue construction sites, again, might need some specialisms as well when they're dealing around protecting people from fire. And what this is a more generalistic view around competency for the more normal types of buildings that we undertake fire risk assessments in. Okay, next slide, please. So, and again, if those of you who followed the Grenfell Tower inquiry, although there was a lot around people not being competent, probably the thing that really stuck out was about behaviours and how people probably didn't use the most ethical behaviours in their work rather than them being totally incompetent. It was around what they thought they could get away with. So in the British Standard, there's a really excellent model code of conduct, and the code identifies key principles such as integrity, honesty and propriety to ensure ethical professional behaviour, which is really key in our industry. And it also highlights the importance of whistleblowing and clear communication. And again, maintaining your liability insurance or indemnity. So with the IFE register, we always ensure that people have got public liability insurance, etc. And also one of the questions we regularly ask in the interview is a scenario around finding a building where it probably needs prohibiting and you can't fix it at once. What's going to be your attitude in that? Are you going to just let it go, or are you going to report it to the correct authorities, which is obviously the right thing to do because of that? And I get around the protection of your work, but this is where having the right ethical behaviours and following this code of conduct is the right thing to do. Okay, next slide, please. So in the standard, there are 3 levels of competence. There are foundation, intermediate and advanced. So foundation is the entry level. And this is one of the things I think can be really applauded around the standard, because obviously predominantly the fire risk assessment industry has been predominantly made up of ex-fire and rescue service staff who may have retired, and therefore they're at a certain age of their career, and there wasn't much around how do we get new and diverse people into our industry. And this foundation start is a really good start for that, where people can come in, practice fire risk assessments under supervision, some of the more low risk premises, and get that. Your intermediate is obviously your bulk of the work around where it is, and we'll look at and David will cover the levels and that in his bit. And so there's that bit of from foundation to progression, and then you've got the advanced stage, which will cover the more complex buildings and where you'll need a higher degree of knowledge and experience and skills, etc. Okay, next slide, please. So the standard covers the SCED, which is talked about a lot nowadays, and I said it covers the skills you require to undertake the professionalism fire risk assessment, and some of these skills are around, verbal skills, communication skills, writing skills. Because again, I think one of the things in my enforcement background is finding people have done very, very good fire risk assessments, but when I've spoken to the responsible person, they haven't understood it because it's either not written in the language they understand, or the person undertaking the fire risk assessment has not kind of explained that they've done the risk assessment, handed it over, and that's where it is. So having these skills around that as well is really important. Knowledge is obviously key important, and that's where David in the exams will come in, and there's a whole list of the raft of stuff we need to understand at different levels when we're undertaking the role of a fire risk assessor. And obviously experience is good. There'll be, how many years you've been doing it, etc., is important, and how you work through that. But it's not the be all and end all, because there's varying types of experience in this range. And obviously I spoke before about how important behaviours are. Doing the right thing is always the best thing to do, and having them behaviours will really help you as a fire risk assessor. And as I spoke around, the model code of conduct is really, really important. Okay, next slide, please. So the relationship between competence and building risk profiles, the standard covers this. And I said the foundation, which is that entry level, that first level, talks about low occupancy and low risk. So we'll have a range of buildings where numbers will be low, or the risk in that building is low. This is always difficult to do. It's not an exact science around risk from that point of view. So there are some blurrings there, but I think it gives you key principles that I think we need. The intermediate one talks about medium occupancy and medium risk. These might be small blocks of flats and that kind of stuff, or smaller cinemas, theatres, etc. And then you have the advanced stage, which is the highest level they've got at the moment. Now, I've left this kind of blank because it's not all the rest of the buildings, as I said before. It doesn't cover some of the specialisms I mentioned, like prisons, nuclear installations, construction sites. They are specialisms that you would probably need still at advanced range, because the knowledge skills, but you need a bolt on that around that kind of thing. So it's not saying if you get the advanced level that you can do every building. And I want to kind of make that clear. And it goes back to that, knowing your levels of competence, knowing what you can and what you can't do. But I would say advanced is looking at purpose-built blocks of flats, the tall ones covered by the building safety regulator, care homes, specialised housing, then hotels, higher risk, sleeping risk, etc. And it might also cover larger factories, which have a different kind of risk, very large theatres, complex shopping centres, things like that. So that's what we're looking for in the advanced stage from that point of view. Okay, next slide, please. So further reading, I said I would recommend you look at this. Get a copy of 8674 so you can have a look at it and go through the details. Also, there is a fire risk assessment national practice guide. There are two parts of that, part 1 and part 2, which has been issued by the Fire Sector Confederation, which again are really good documents around, and they go into far more detail than this British standard does around the skills, experience, knowledge and behaviours that you need to be a fire risk assessor. So I would definitely try and download. I believe they're available on the Fire Sector Confederation website that you can access them from. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, thanks very much. That's my bit finished. There will be time for questions at the end. I'll now hand you over to David.
Thank you, Nick, and hello, everybody. As Nick said, if you've got any questions, just stick them in the chat, and Rachel's going to be looking through them so we can go through questions at the end of the session. So the first slide, please. So as you would expect, the qualifications, which have been developed by the Institute of Fire Engineers, and we've developed them with quite a broad range of subject matter experts, just to make sure that we've got the breadth of the qualifications right, and they're aligned to each of the levels within the British Standard. So your Level 3 award, your Level 4 certificate, and your Level 5 certificate. Each award sort of follows on from the other one, so most of the learning and understanding needed for the Level 3 award will be in the Level 4 certificate plus some, and then the Level 5 certificate will include some of the learning and understanding from the Level 3 and the Level 4. However, there's no requirement to do one level before you go to the other level, so you can just sit the Level 5 certificate straight away if you like. The key thing we've done here with the IFE is to really look at those people who are in industry already. They might be highly competent fire risk assessors, but they're lacking a formal qualification at Level 5 to be accepted onto risk registers. So this examination is really for those practicing practitioners who have got the knowledge, they've got the understanding, but they haven't got a formal qualification. So it's set where you can do your own study, no need to sign up for a course, and just sit the exam. And again, which exam you sit is entirely down to you. If you just want to have a go at Level 5 to see where you sit, that's entirely down to you. But again, we recommend that you have a look at the syllabus and the reading list to make sure it's the right level for you. But again, the Level 3 award is there for people who are new to the syllabus, new to the profession, to get a first rung on the ladder. Now, although there's a lot of reading lists and there's lots of syllabuses here, I would encourage everyone who's doing these exams or is in the profession to take up some sort of informal coaching or mentoring. So if you're new to doing fire risk assessments, then obviously the best way to learn is to follow someone who's doing a fire risk assessment. That's a lot more better than sitting down reading standards and reading codes of compliance. Likewise, for Level 5, if you haven't done a high-rise building before, shadowing someone doing high-rise buildings and high-risk buildings will be probably one of the best ways to prepare for these examinations. Because although the examinations do test knowledge and understanding, really we're looking at the competency, which is applying that knowledge and understanding in practice. As you would expect as well, all these qualifications are Ofqual regulated. Thank you, Rachel. So let's start at the Level 3 award in fire risk assessment. So as we said, this is the foundation award. If you want to move on to the next slide. So again, appropriate for new entrants. So it's simple, low risk buildings, low occupancy, so your small offices and shops. This is a standalone qualification on its own. It's a 2-hour online examination and it's got an 80% pass mark. So it's 100 questions, therefore you need 80 questions to pass. So the results of this is a pass-fail. There's no gradings. It's either you've passed the exam or you haven't passed the exam. As we said, there's no entry requirements to any of the exams, but you must have a good understanding of English to be able to obviously read and respond to the questions. The total qualification time to complete this examination is 112 hours. Now, obviously, that's what Ofqual have stated for the Level 3 award, and that's really split into 110 hours of your own personal study and application and 2 hours for the online exam itself. So when you look at getting a Level 3 award, just 110 hours study, that's not a great amount of time to pick up a qualified, recognised qualification in fire risk assessment. So let's have a look at a reading list for a Level 3 award. Now, this can be quite daunting, but this is a Level 3 award. So really, we're looking at awareness here. So an awareness of the standard, awareness of the steps for a fire risk assessment, an awareness that you've got things like BS 9991, 9999, an awareness of British standards for fire detection and emergency lighting, an awareness that ADB covers fire safety, an awareness that we've got something called the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order, and a little bit of awareness around project management, really around sort of time, quality, and cost. And trying to think if they're still called the DCLG Fire Safety Risk Assessment Guides, but the rainbow booklets, again, for those ones for the Level 3 award, we're really looking at officers and shops, the risk assessment guides there. So it looks like quite a daunting reading list, but for the Level 3 award, we're really looking at an awareness that these exist and really just the prime principles of these bits of legislation and standards. We're not expecting you to know it inside out, and none of the questions will ask something like which paragraph and which subsection covers this. It's not about learning things parrot fashion or by rote. It's just making sure that you've got the principles and you can apply them in a real life fire risk assessment. So what's in the Level 3 award? If we go into the syllabus now, everything I'm saying here is available on a website. So if you want to know a lot more detail, then have a look on the website. You've got the syllabus, you've got the scope, and then you've got all the learning outcomes. And again, no question will be set in the exam if it doesn't meet a learning outcome and it's not in the reading list. So really all you need to pass the exams is there on the website. But really, we're looking at principles and scopes of fire risk assessment. So I'm not going to read out all the bullet points, but they're most of the learning outcomes for this section of it. And really, we're looking at, can you identify hazards? Can you conduct a simple risk evaluation? Are you aware of the steps to take a risk assessment? And do you understand when a risk can be a high risk or a tolerable risk or a low risk? So something fairly simple and easy for the principles and scopes of fire risk assessments. Next slide, please. Also, we can talk a bit about legislation, fire development, fire spread throughout all the suites of the qualifications. So at this level, we are looking at really sort of a triangle of fire, how fire starts, what is meant by direct ignition, indirect ignition. Looking at an awareness of a regulatory reform fire safety order, responsibilities of duty holders, ethical principles will be in here slightly as well, and looking at the key stages of fire development from ignition through to flashover and decay, and looking at some core ignition sources, looking at smoke spread and the principle of compartmentation. So something which is sort of fairly easy, fairly simple, not too complex or not too sciencey. Next slide, please. So next area is building design and construction. So really we're looking at the difference between passive and active fire systems, looking at the fire performance of most common construction materials, introducing means of escape, and awareness of different bits of legislation. So an awareness that buildings can be built under approved document B, 999, 999, or have fire engineered solutions. So it's just really an awareness at this stage in a level 3 award. But the key thing it's looking at towards here really is fire detection systems and emergency lighting. Thank you. Next slide. So the final one is fire risk management. So just an awareness that there needs to be fire risk management, a little bit about housekeeping and how the responsible person and duty holders can keep the buildings fire safe, and very simple technical calculations. So really simple ones around occupational limits, door widths calculations, and really simple travel time and travel distances. And obviously an awareness of RSET and ASET calculations. And again, on these examinations, the actual online exam will have a calculator for you, and it's not a scientific calculator. So we're not looking at any calculations, any equations. It's easy peasy, plus minuses, subtractions and divisions. You'll be pleased to know. So that's it for the level 3 award. So if we look at the level 4 certificate, as we said, this builds on from the level 3. So the reading list for the level 3 will include the level 4 certificate. And again, it's at a medium level. So we're looking at medium risk, medium complexity buildings. Now for this qualification, it meets the academic level for admission as technician, TI-FIRE. And if you've got another 3 level 4 certificates with the IFE, together with this one, then you'll have your 4 level 4 certificates, and that gives you an admission route to graduate GI-FIRE with the IFE. This also helps you to give access to the IFE Fire Risk Register and can assist you in pathway for registration with the Engineering Council as an engineering technician. Again, this is a 2-hour online exam with an 80% pass mark, 100 questions. So that's 80 needed. Again, all pass-fail, no gradings, no entry requirements apart from a good, clear bit of English. And as you can see, the total qualification time here is ramped up a bit from the level 3 award. We're looking at 262 hours of study. And the reason for that is the reading list. We're not looking just at an awareness now, we're looking at more of an in-depth understanding of the reading list. So the reading list, so it's all for level 3 plus these additional ones. So we're looking at the guidance for specialised housing, the NFCC Fire Risk Assessor Competency Framework, healthcare premises. We're looking at educational buildings, a bit more about compartmentation in buildings, a little bit more about fire engineering design, just introducing the risk of external wall assessments and having an awareness of PAS 9980, an awareness that there's specification and certification in place for certain buildings, a little bit more awareness of fire risk management, and then introducing a lot around human behaviour, especially within BS 7974. All the published documents are there, but preferably part 6 where it looks about human behaviour. So a bit more of a wider and extensive reading list, and again, a little bit more of an awareness needed at this level. A lot more I know this and I can apply it in this situation I see myself in. Thank you, Rachel. So again, the syllabus is fairly similar. It's got the same sections in there, but the learning outcomes are a lot more understand, apply and analyse as opposed to having awareness of. So again, here we're looking more about evidence-based approaches for problem solving in fire risk assessments. We're looking at being able to look at a fire strategy, analyse it, see if it's fit for purpose, see if the building is still meeting the intended fire strategy. We're looking at being able to apply reasonable recommendations within your fire risk assessment alongside timescales. Looking at sort of time, cost, and quality when you're putting your potential remediation scope or your issues within your fire risk assessment. And again, looking a lot more here about human factors and the human impact on fire risk assessment outcomes. Thank you, Rachel. So again, the same sort of thing, fire legislation we're looking at here, but a lot more about the regulatory reform fire safety order, the role of the enforcing authorities in the fire and rescue service, when you should escalate findings to them, the roles of the responsible people, the roles of duty holders, and a good awareness of Article 50 of the regulatory reform fire safety order, and again, a bit more understanding of fire spread and fire development. So now we're looking at the fire tetrahedron, we're looking at potentially the Coanda effect, effect of wind-driven fires, the effect of hidden fire spread in certain types of building construction, and the impact of building occupancy and usage on fire development. Next slide, please. Again, building design and construction. So really, we're introducing a bit more about external wall systems, an understanding of when a Type 1 fire risk assessment isn't giving you the result you need, when you need to upscale it to possibly a Type 3 or a Type 4 intrusive fire risk assessment. We'll start to introduce smoke control in the SCA guides, look more about passive fire protection and active systems, looking at when do we introduce fire curtains, voice alarm systems. And when we're looking at building design and construction, we're introducing in this level now product testing, product certification, and engineered solutions. So when we're looking at fire doors, well, how do you check it is a fire door? What certification, what specification, what paperwork do you want alongside that when you're looking at your fire risk assessment? Thank you, Rachel. Again, similar to the other level, fire safety management and personal development. So we're introducing personal development here into level 4. So again, it'll be the fire safety management, your BS 9997 type stuff. But again, personal development, how do you maintain your CPD? How do you shadow and mentor people who are newer to a profession? How do you coach them? How do you guide them? And likewise, how do you coach and guide the responsible person to look at the fire risk assessment and actually implement the recommendations you've put in place? And again, a lot more about how you maintain your own CPD. And last one for this one, again, is your technical calculations. So again, a little bit more of a step up, so a bit more knowledge of mathematical statistics and the natural sciences to solve well-defined problems, so nothing complex here. And again, computational, always get that word wrong, and analytical techniques to address specific fire risk scenarios. So again, it's going to be your occupational limits, your stair capacities, your door width calculations, your travel times, travel distances. Again, stuff which can be done on a book standard calculator, nothing too scientific. Thank you, Rachel. So that was the level 4 certificate. So the next one is a level 5 certificate, which again gets you onto the fire risk register. And so level 5 is about the level we're seeing for fire risk register appointments now. So again, this is advanced level, but as Nick said before, this doesn't cover all buildings. This doesn't cover your nuclear submarine installations, your huge shopping centres with atriums. This is more just for your higher risk, high rise buildings or high occupancy buildings. Again, this is a standalone qualification in its own right. It meets the academic standard for TI Fire E. It gives you access to the IFE Fire Risk Assessor Register and assists you in the pathway to Engineering Council registration as an Eng Tech. Again, it's a 2-hour online exam, 80% pass mark, 80 over 100 questions, again, pass fail. No entry requirements. Again, technically, if you're new to the profession, you could sit this straight away, but again, think about what Nick said before about your competency. Just think about what am I going to be doing. If you're new to a profession, then it is good to start slow and work yourself up as you get your skills and experience and apply it. If you try to jump in straight at level 5, either you're going to be unhappy about your exam result, or actually you'll potentially be punching a bit above your weight in terms of your skills, education, knowledge, and experience. So again, that's something personally to have a think about as to whether this level is right for you or whether you should go for one of the lower levels beforehand. Again, the total qualification time for this is around 260 hours. Again, that's private study. And as I said before, make sure you're including some of that mentoring and actually shadowing fire risk assessors within this certificate as well. So what's in the certificate? Again, it's a similar syllabus. The reading list is the same as a level 4 and a level 3, but with some added things here. So again, we've got the 7346 series. So we go a lot more into smoke control systems, again, because that's one of the fundamentals of fire risk assessment with your smoke control. Look at your sprinkler systems, your fire misting systems, your evacuation alert systems. We formally introduced the Engineering Council Statement of Ethical Principles, again, as this links into the Fire Risk Assessor Register, and also the IFE Code of Conduct. Thank you. So again, principles and scopes of FRAs. So here now we're going right into we know all the ins and outs of FRAs. We know all the different standards, how to apply them, the types of fire risk assessments, how to interpret fire strategies, how to develop certain fire strategies, how to analyse and interpret complex fire safety data, how to look at fire engineering principles, how to specify performance requirements for fire safety measures, understand human factors, and effectively communicate complex information to stakeholders. So you can see here it's just stepping up a bit from the level 4 certificate. And I think for this one as well, we're looking at high risk items. So what is an urgent interim measure, and what interim measures could you put in place, and when to escalate things where you're on site and you think, I can't leave the site until this is rectified. So for the legislation, fire development spread, again, it's building on from the level 4. So interpreting and applying fire safety legislations and statutory obligations, the application of fire risk assessment principles, and a variety of specialist premises. So there'll be more questions here about educational establishments, about healthcare premises, about specialised premises as well. Again, understanding mechanisms of combustion and fire spread, looking at products of combustion, looking at toxicity a little bit as well, looking at building contents and occupancy, external wall systems, and social, economic, and commercial constraints to the application of fire safety measures. So that's where some of the ethical principles will be brought into these examinations. Next slide, please. Again, fire safety management and personal development is in here like the level 4, and technical calculations, but again, they're going to be just at a little higher level and apply to a higher and more complex system itself. So when we're looking at fire detection systems, emergency lighting, and sprinkler systems, it's going to a bit more depth into your knowledge and understanding. But again, the actual technical calculations are around your evacuation strategies. So for the level 5, you're looking at your progressive horizontal evacuations and your ASET, RSET calculations as well. So that's really the syllabus for the level 3 award, level 4 certificate, and the level 5 certificate. Again, this is all on the IFE website, and it's broken down even more into more detailed learning outcomes. So really looking at the reading list, looking at the detailed learning outcomes, that gives you really your curriculum for understanding what needs to be studied for these exams. But what will the questions look like? So if we move on to the next slide, the format of the questions, unfortunately, is not going to be as simple as which is correct, A, B, C, D, or E, because this is an Ofqual registered qualifications, and we're really testing your knowledge and understanding in a high-risk industry. So they will be multiple choice questions. On the level 3 award, there may be some which is correct to select for correct answer, but for most of them, they're going to be more detailed for that. So it could be select all applicable answers rather than just one. It might be you're given a brief and a scenario, and you've got a set of actions, and you need to decide which one's the right action, or which one's the most preferred action, which one's the least preferred action. It could be that we asked to list a process or procedures and put them in the correct order. It could be that you've got 2 or more correct answers from a list to select. It might be that you need to drag and drop which ones relate to a different area, or which ones are true, which ones are false potentially. But probably not for these exams because they're a higher risk one, but it could be which ones are applicable to this British standard, which ones are applicable to another British standard. There will be some questions about calculations, and you need to just manually type in the correct calculation answer. And it could be just fill in the blank options where you're asked to fill in a specific word or specific missing phrases in a paragraph. So although it is all online, it isn't just multiple choice. It is set exams question formats which really do test your knowledge and understanding. So if any of you remember back in the day when you get the exams and you could just go, well, I haven't had answer D for a while, let's put answer D in there. You won't get away with these exams. You do really need to study and know your stuff, as you would expect, obviously, for these types of exams. So when will these exams be available? Well, at the moment, they're only available during our March and October examination sessions, but you're not restricted to a specific date. You've got an 8-week window to take the exam. So if you've registered for exams in October, you'll be given an 8-week window in which to sit for exam. So it isn't on demand at the moment, but an 8-week window gives you a good opportunity to find a time suitable to do it. The best place to do it is somewhere where you're private, on your own, and you're not going to be interrupted by anybody. So probably not at work in the office. It's probably not the best option for this. Ideally, not taking these exams on a tablet or on a fixed PC. A laptop's probably best for this. A laptop with Google Chrome, and one which is able to download our online examination software. The reason we say laptops are probably better risk because we do ask that during exams you lift your laptop and show us your room just to make sure you haven't got hidden fire risk engineers under your table or textbooks out on show. But again, the exams teams can talk you through that to make sure it's all okay. Future is that these online exams will go on demand, that you can take them as and when. But at the moment, we're just not there yet. But that is the future for this. What happens if you fail it? Can you take it straight away? Well, the answer is yes. If you fail in October, you can apply and take it in March. But again, just thinking about code of conduct and ethical principles, you don't want to be just taking these potluck. You want to be thinking, okay, am I ready to do this? Am I ready to take this next exam? Don't talk about costs. We talk more about investment for these exams because it is an investment in your career. The level 3 award is £250 to take the exam. The level 4 certificate is £330, and the level 5 certificate is £370. That's obviously for standard entries. Late fees, late applications attract a slightly higher fee, and again, these may change with costs going forward. But when you look at the this compared to other fire risk assessment qualifications and courses, it's quite a small investment for an off-qual registered qualification out of it. So next slide, which is just really an overview. So there are 3 qualifications aligned to the British standard from foundation to advanced. Again, just to reinforce the target audience, although you can sit the level 5 certificate and no one's going to stop you doing it, just think of your own pathway, your own career profile at the moment, which one would be suitable for you. So again, the level 3 award for new entrants, level 4 certificate for experienced professionals, and level 5 certificate for those who are working in highly experienced professionals looking at higher risk buildings. And again, the scope, simple, low risk, medium occupancy, high risk, high occupancy. And again, the study times around there and your exam fees. So that's really an overview of it. Again, if you've got any specific questions around any reasonable adjustments we can make, again, we've got the reasonable adjustments policy on the IFE website. And again, there's other things the IFE education team can assist you with, but again, they're only a phone call away. Apart from that, I'll leave for the next slide, which I think is time for questions.
Yes, so we're now moving into the Q&A session. Thank you for all the questions that have been coming in. Please do keep them coming in via the Q&A button on your screen. We'll take some time to go through as many of your questions as we can now. So I'll sort of go through them in order. So we're likely to go back to Nick, I think, for a lot of these. Nick, construction site fire risk assessments are outside of the scope of the FSO. So does that mean that they are outside of the scope of this British standard as well, as the first question?
So they're not outside the scope of the FSO. Construction sites are done by they're enforced by the Health and Safety Executive. So they are done, but for this type, for the British standard, it depends, because again, it depends on the complexity of the construction site. That's the bit. It's like anything that there might be that the intermediate or the advanced might cover fairly standard construction sites, but if you've got a very, very complex one, then that'd be slightly different, where you need a bit of specialist kind of intervention, and that's what I'm trying to get across. It might be that you do the FRA, but you need to pull in some advice from someone else who knows that, or it's completely out of your comfort zone or your competency, and you've got to get someone else to do it. So they are kind of covered, but I was just trying to emphasize the point that there are some specialisms. Something like, I think David mentioned, a nuclear sub installation, no, is not covered by the British standard at all. But construction sites said, because they can range from just like, a 2-story office block with a construction site. Well, that's not that difficult as such, but a very big complex site might be slightly different. Oh, you're on mute.
Does BS 8674 cover the assessor conducting FRAEW external wall appraisal?
Again, it's probably a similar answer. It doesn't cover that specifically. Obviously, there is the PAS that covers it. What it's trying to say is that, again, it's very clear about what is your limitations of competence. If you can do 99880, then and fire risk assessments, fill your boots kind of thing. But it's normally pretty specialist, that kind of work. And I saw another question around PI insurance, around not my speciality, but obviously as a fire risk risk assessor, you should be able to say whether it's brick or concrete and be able to do that inside the realms of your public liability insurance. But I would get that checked, because I know there has been some exclusions, but that would make it very, very difficult if you couldn't even comment on a standard brick and tile construction. You'd have to get an FREW in. That's not how it's meant to work. So it probably maybe go back and go back to your provider and talk about that from that point of view, because I don't think it was set up for that. It was to stop you going outside your limits of competency in that day. So don't comment on stuff you don't know, basically on a fire external wall.
Great. I think moving on probably more to the exam for, well, a bit of both really. If someone who has fire engineering background wishes to apply to become a fire risk assessor, is there a different pathway for applying to be assessed?
No, because applications on to be fire risk assessor register go through the same route, regardless of your background, if I'm correct about Nick, and that all involves an interview, regardless of your previous experience.
Yeah, correct. And obviously there's a lot of crossover with fire engineering, in that world, and so currently you wouldn't need these qualifications to try and apply for the register, and what you've got in your fire engineering expertise might be enough. But I think we need to be clear that what is coming down the line from the post-Grenfell inquiry is that you will need a specific qualification in fire risk assessment. So eventually, this will be a pathway to get there, and having a fire engineering degree or a level 5 fire engineering technician qualification will not cut the mustard in the future. From my point of view, again, this is my personal opinion. I think the government will do it in stages, and if they ever get to all buildings, it probably won't be in my lifetime, but I'll imagine that they will start with the highest risk, and the level 5 will be the one is where they're going. So that's what's coming. I saw another question around, if I'm already on the register, do I have to do the examinations? You will eventually. That will be the pathway, because eventually it'll be in statute. How far away we are from that, I don't know. Probably 18 months, 2 years, I'd imagine, at a minimum. But that's the route the IFE are going to probably go down before that, because I think as a leading fire organisation, we should be setting the standard before and not waiting for the legislation to come. So eventually that will happen to even people on the register, including myself. So I will have to sit the exam. So there you go.
Brilliant. We have quite a few asking about engineers who are already on the fire risk register, engineers with level 6 level or master's degree qualifications. Do they need to take these exams?
I think Nick's covered that, but the mood and music is that you need a specific qualification in fire risk assessment. So although it may seem bizarre, you've got a Masters of Science in fire risk engineering. Again, sitting this qualification at level 5 just covers you off that, I've got a dedicated examination in fire risk assessment. Obviously, we know that fire risk assessment is covered in fire engineering in great detail, but again, we just make sure that, yes, you've got a dedicated examination and qualification in fire risk assessment.
And I think this is the beauty of the IFE exams. You don't have to do any courses. You can just go and sit the exam. It's as simple as that. So if you think you've got the competency and the knowledge through your fire engineering background to sit these exams, you've seen what David said on the syllabus. If you already cover that, go for the exam, and then you've got it. Then this is not saying you've got to go on this 260-hour training course, because we know there's a lot of people in the sector who have got maybe even a diploma. They may have level 5. So you've got the skills and that, and look at the syllabus. And if you think you've covered it, sit the exam. So I think this is one of the real advantages of these exams, that there is no requirement to go on a course first, costing you a lot of money, because we know we have a lot of legacy people who've got lots of experience in this regime, and therefore I think this is one of the real bonuses of these exams from an IFE point of view.
Absolutely. Sorry, there's lots coming in, so I'm just trying to keep up here. Will the old fire service college courses count as appropriate qualifications?
They were excellent, having sat them myself. I'm going to say that, but you know, and again, you know, I don't know how long ago you took yours, but mine were probably nearly 30 years ago now. So you've got to cover that up with CPD, as you should be doing anyway. Again, I go to our previous answer. There was stuff you did in that hasn't changed, and therefore you'd be able to, you know, do the exams as well. So, you know, we need to make it really clear there is nothing that is the equivalent of these exams unless it's another same fire risk assessment qualification offered by another body, but it's got to be distinct in fire risk assessment. So all the other qualifications you may have, there'll be knowledge in that you'll need, but it's not the same. There is no equivalent at the moment, and I don't think they're going to go that one. They want a distinct fire risk assessment qualification.
Excellent. We have quite a few questions referring to courses, training courses, the costs of them, and how to enroll. I know either one of you could answer this, but just to quickly mark it off, these exams are self-study, so training courses would be separate to the IFE. So in terms of what we're presenting here, it's just with reflection of the exams. Just to get through a load of things.
What I would just add there, Rachel, is if anyone's struggling, if they're new to a sector and they're struggling, I don't really know any fire risk assessors to shadow. Again, first thing is try and get hold of your local IFE branch and reach out there. Or there's plenty of IFE registered fire risk assessors on LinkedIn. Just get on LinkedIn, shout out there. Quite a few people are already saying, look, could I shadow someone doing a high-rise FRA as part of my development? Again, it's part of our code of conduct, isn't it, to assist others? So, of course, you know, we will jump on that and try and sort you out. No problem at all.
Absolutely. So to get myself on the IFE register for complex buildings, I should complete the level 5 in fire risk assessment and then pass the exam. Would that then get me onto the IFE register?
It's a pathway, because there's not an automatic kind of bit around getting the qualification. It's just one part, you know, that's your, you know, getting your knowledge, and that we will then check whether you've got relative experience and the skills, and then the interview is that professional discussion. I don't like calling it an interview, it's a professional discussion, so we can then put into place, we look at your risk assessments, so we look at the work, you know, that you've done that, because, you know, in theory, you could actually go and look at these exams and pass them without actually have done a fire risk assessment. Probably highly unlikely, but it could happen. Whereas to get on the register, you have to demonstrate that you've actually done fire risk assessments for a number of years, and therefore we've got that experience. And we actually look at your risk assessments. We don't visit the buildings, but we look at what you write, and then you're questioned on that through a professional discussion. So getting the qualification is the first step, basically, on the pathway.
Absolutely. That's perfect. I think we've gone over a little bit there, so I'll wrap it up a bit there. If there are any further questions, please do feel free to email them through, and we'll support you there. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you found the session valuable and informative. A recording of this webinar will shortly be made available on the IFE's YouTube channel, as well as our CPD Hub. The Hub is an exclusive member resource giving you access to a wide range of on-demand webinars, resources, and professional development content designed to support your ongoing learning and career progression. To find out more, please visit the IFE website and explore our membership options. Thank you again for your time. Have a great day, and we hope to see you at another webinar soon.